Hello. Welcome to Levels Plus Weekly, episode 18. This has been a bit of a recording adventure. I recorded two different things yesterday, and neither of them worked out. So, the good news is that the stuff I recorded today is solid. So, part one today is just kind of a quick little look at the actual physical First and Frequent Fantasy. I got those earlier this week, and I'll let past me tell you all about it. Then we'll roll into a lengthy discussion on my DS, 3DS, and Game Boy Advance games. So I'm going to magically transition out of this shot with the cats behind me to a shot of me on the other side of the room holding my book. Like right now. I'm gonna just pause this for a second. Well, we got some cute cat footage going on the beds. Look at how cute they are, taking their noops. Yeah. Good cue, bud. So, instead of spending copious amounts of time on my book, I've talked about it a lot on Levels Plus Weekly already. I just want to show you the thing. I want to show you this book that I have put so much time into. It started in 2012. With my ethnographic methods class. So this is 9 years. 9 years to produce this book. And it is one of my proudest achievements because, as I talked about when I talked about the book a couple weeks ago, not only was it difficult on getting all the research together and transcribing all the interviews and then doing all the analysis, it was hard emotionally because of where all of the stuff with my ex and having to deal with her involvement post divorce. But it's here. It's a physical book. It's thick. It's a thick book. There is over 400 pages in this thing, just full of data and analysis, and it is one of my greatest accomplishments as a games writer, critic, video producer, I don't know, games person. That's me. Well, catch AF. I'm the games person. So again, thank you to JD for this awesome cover. Love this cover so much. It's so professional. Everything I wanted it to be. I also have to thank JD for the transcription help. Honestly, this book would probably still be in limbo without you. So, just thank you so much. And so this is my copy. So this is the title page, and I sign all of the books that I've done, with a little acknowledgement to myself about celebrating what I've done. So, especially with this one, this is a huge accomplishment, and I am taking all the pride in this book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reframe this so that way we can look at the book more directly, instead of just my face. And then I'm just going to kind of spotlight a couple sections, and then we'll cat intermission into the incredibly lengthy, I hope you like, long collection video content that is going to be the end cap of this video. Alright, so here's the introduction. It's nothing too fancy, but then we get into the background, which is the Beyond Good and Evil, the State of Gender in Video Games in 2013 essay that is on Levels Plus. This has been modified a little bit from what's currently on the blog. But it's generally the same. I just added a couple updated links and did some more editing and cleanup to it. So talk a bit about the initial design here, and like for example, there's some charts. So this really just kind of gets into how I came up with this project and how I came up with the survey questions and all of that. Methodology, which is basically how I went about taking what I did for the design and actually executing it. And then we get into the data section. So there's a lot of data, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of data. There's 112 pages of charts and lists and all of that fun stuff. As you'll notice, I did print this in black and white. There was a reason for that, which was basically it would double the price to print all of this in color. So I just decided that it looked good when I looked at it on the previewer, and it printed well. It's all clear, so. But lots and lots of that. And then we have all 16 interviews that I did that are transcribed. This is the biggest part of the book. There's probably over 200 pages of it just in these transcriptions. So that is why when I say thank you to JD for transcriptions, and I absolutely mean it. So once I get through that one and we start the conclusion, the conclusion was the last hurdle. I touched on this the last time I talked about the book. But once I got over the old idea of breaking down every single survey question and trying to supplement it with interview content and just focused on highlights, things that caught my attention, it became a lot easier and a lot more engaging. As you can see that, like here I talk about genres and then all of the various responses from the interviewees. So I did do this throughout. The most thorough section, I think, was being a woman online, basically talking about being a woman who plays games, and just about every single person, except maybe one or two in the interviews, talked about that. There's several pages just with their comments. So I pulled out stuff that I thought would be interesting outside of all of the interview data, because there's a lot. And I'm very proud of this conclusion. I think it's solid. There's also some appendices in the back. So there's a participant observation, a preliminary interview with my friend Regina, as I mentioned last time, as well as some focus group stuff. And honestly, the focus group is the one thing that I really wish I could have included in the book. I just don't have that. I don't have that audio recording anymore. It was still on my 2 laptops ago. And as much as I would have loved to have had it in this book, I don't have any way of getting that audio file. So just wanted to give a little bit more of a close-up to the back of the book as well. But yeah, First in Frequent Fantasy, University Women in Gaming, real physical product, actual thing. So proud of this. So the physical book is $30 on Amazon, and you can get a Kindle version for $15. The Kindle version is in full color, so that is one of the advantages of that. All proceeds from First and Frequent Fantasy, as well as Maya Moments in Zenobia, basically help fund more stuff. I've been getting ready for 2 more books, one of which is a lot cheaper to produce. That book that's the easier one to produce in terms of no buying a bunch of carts from another country, is Evolve, which will be a book about my artwork and how it has evolved from 1995 to the present day. And I'm actually very excited about it. I've started some preliminary stuff on it. I've kind of screened through all the art that I still have physically. I need to kind of go through all the stuff I have on my laptop and compare and see what I want to include. But I want it to be diverse. I want it to be stuff that at the time I remember taking a lot of pride in. It's definitely going to be a journey going from 95 to 2021. But I hope it's one that would catch interest. That one is definitely a vanity project. I'm not anticipating that one selling a whole bunch, but it's something I want to do, so I'm doing it. Then there's Famicom Power. Yes, I have an official name. That's what I've been buying all of these lovely carts for. With more coming, and I decided to go with Famicom Power because it allows me to keep the Famicom part, which I really like, but it's putting its own spin on it, and it still kind of captures that Nintendo-esque feeling that I was going for. So I don't think people who have also used Famicom will be too bothered by it. I hope not. And it kind of gave me some design ideas for how to actually execute the final book that I'm very excited about trying to do. So I'll have more on Famicom Power Issue 1. I'm going to have them as issues. You're kind of might be getting a hint of where I'm going here. I hope to actually get some work done on that a little bit more thoroughly once I get a few more carts in. Not just the shipment that's coming, but probably in August I'm hoping to get a lot more of the NES carts from Gamers in Control, and I'll probably have at least one, maybe two, I don't know. It's kind of hard when it comes to this type of stuff because it's like I'm buying this stuff for a project, so I'm not really thinking about it as expensible money, but it totally is. I'm burning my excess money on these things. So all of my book proceeds will help with the purchase of additional stuff like this for Famicom Power, which is going to be a series that continues beyond just one book. Then down the road, my intention is to turn my localization articles Culture Clash into a book as well, and that will probably also be a series. I've got about 31 of those written already, so that's basically enough, I think, for a book, especially since some of them are multi-game. Like, I cover all of the Mega Man games, all of the Dragon Quest / Warrior games. So that will probably be the next project once Evolve's done. But Evolve's what I'm kind of working on in terms of actually designing the thing. I'm going to work on Famicom Power later this year. So there's your book update. Let's go ahead and cat intermission our way into the handheld Nintendo collection discussion. Bobby is sitting here next to me for some reason. What's up? Hey. What? Guess it's your turn to say hello to everybody in the live video. You don't do that very often. Ben's usually the more active one. Well, as I promised earlier, we're going to do some more collection talk, and I think what I'm going to do, I was thinking about this morning, is I've got all of my handheld Nintendo stuff. I moved the Game Boy Advance stuff, which is normally stored in the cabinet over there, over here, so that way I don't have to move. And we'll cover all of that. So we'll do this chronologically. So we'll start with the Game Boy Advance. I moved them from that cabinet over here to just make things easier. And my hope is that I've adjusted things enough so the glare won't be so bad. I noticed that was an issue with all the PlayStation stuff I was showing off yesterweek. Yesterweek. Making up new words here. And we're going to start with Metroid Zero Mission. This is my third favorite Metroid game behind Super Metroid and Metroid Prime. And it is really, really, really good. I actually love this box art. I'm going to put it back up. I have a canvas piece on my wall, which I'm sure has popped up in the background of Levels Plus Weekly before. I'll just go ahead and take a quick shot of it and plop it here. I love it. I got it as a Festivus present. It's my favorite Metroid box art. So I really love the art style that they went with for this game. But I have it as like third because ultimately my feeling on Metroid Zero Mission is that it's a little more technical than I'd like it to be in terms of getting like 100% completion. With Fusion, they upped the Shine Spark technique to make it even like wilder than it was in the Super Nintendo version, and this basically evolves from that and takes it a step further. So I don't think I've gotten 100%. I've gotten close, but there's just a couple of those Shine Spark things that are just way too hard for me. I much prefer Super Metroid's approach, where it seems more fair. But that's honestly the only really big complaint I have about Metroid Zero Mission. I think that it does a good job remaking the original NES game, adding in some new wrinkles. I don't mind the stealth section after you beat Mother Brain at all. I think that's fun. I do resent the Zero suit because it basically became the replacement for the bikini outfit following this game. And even in Smash, I feel that it's still being used in a weird manner. So I don't care for the Zero suit outside of this game. I think it's fine in Zero Mission. I don't think it's been fine anywhere else. So the original Fire Emblem, aka the Blazing Blade, I've had a tendency to get it in the Binding Blade, which is the prequel, which is a sequel. Why do we do this? Mixed up, but this is the Blazing Blade, and I really like this game. This was my introduction to Fire Emblem, as I mentioned it was for most North American players. Lynn is like my third favorite video game woman of all time. I absolutely adore her. I got a statue of her on the way from Good Smile that I'll probably have in January, I'm gonna guess, based on how their shipping has worked out in the past. This I still think is like the best old school Fire Emblem. I've played this in Sacred Stones and Path of Radiance and Shadow Dragon. I beat Sacred Stones, but I don't have it anymore because I felt like it made tweaks to what this did that I didn't really care for as much. Primarily in the map. Path of Radiance, I don't know what it is about Path of Radiance. I love the character design and all of that, but there's just something about that game that just didn't work for me, and I don't know what it was. I always got bored. And it's around the same mission too, where Jill, the Wyvern Rider, shows up. I don't know why that particular mission, but the two times I played, that's where I stopped. That's why I didn't get into Radiant Dawn, is because I didn't really care for Path of Radiance. And now Path of Radiance costs a lot of money, as does Radiant Dawn, in the resale market. So I'm hoping that rumor of the remake, port, whatever it is, coming to Switch is real. And then Shadow Dragon is probably one of the worst remakes I've ever played. So I've dabbled enough with the Famicom version of the first game to just know that something went awry with that DS Shadow Dragon. I think the biggest thing is that the animation in Fire Emblem and Sacred Stones, but I think Fire Emblem does it better. The animation for crits and the attacks are so good that seeing what they did with the added tech of the DS just was not good. No. And that was really, I think, my biggest issue. And it really just felt like a step back. And granted, it's a remake of the Famicom game, but I think it just didn't do what it needed to do. But this one is very good. If you want to get into the old ones in terms of what's available in English, that's probably your best bet. Next up is Capcom Classics Mini Mix. So this is a collection of 3 NES games. They're basically just, it's a shell to access those 3 games that have been slightly resized for the Game Boy Advance screen. So there's nothing fancy about this. There's no save states, there's no rewind, nothing of that sort. You get the 3 games, that's what you get. But they're really good games. I mean, in terms of quality, this is solid, because you get Mighty Final Fight, which is a remix of the arcade Final Fight, but on the NES format, so they went with the chibi art style and kind of had this experience system to make up for it being one player to get a little bit more engaging. Personally, I find it a bit dull, but it's a good game, and it's definitely a good inclusion here. We got the Nes Strider, which is probably one of the earlier Metroidvanias to follow in the footsteps of Metroid. And while it's janky and feels like it's unfinished, I still think it's a solid enough game worth experiencing, and it has a really good soundtrack. And then there's the NES Bionic Commando, which is the 14th best game ever made as far as I'm concerned, so I'm not going to say anymore. But as of today, as of April 17th, this is the only way you can play Bionic Commando and Strider outside of the NES, Famicom, or emulation. And that's a tragedy. It really is, because both of those games deserve a renewed spotlight upon them. Next up is the Game Boy Advance port of Street Fighter Alpha 3 and Zangief's Day in the Sun. I don't know if he's gotten any bigger pop on a box than this. This is a remarkable port, honestly, because if you think about Street Fighter Alpha 3, it's a beautiful, fluid fighting game on probably one of the best running CPS2 games that Capcom ever made. So it's a technical challenge just to even think about trying to do that on the Game Boy Advance, which is basically a glorified Super Nintendo in terms of the hardware. But Crawfish did it. They managed to make the majority of at least the PS1 options for the home version of that available in here. And then went the extra mile and added Yun, Maki, and Eagle from Capcom vs. SNK 2 onto the roster for this. It's the first time that happened, and the only other way to play them in Street Fighter Alpha 3 is on the PSP, which is probably the definitive version of Alpha 3. But I haven't played it. But this has dramatic battle. It does have multiplayer if you have a game link and somebody else happens to have this. It has all of the isms. It has a lot of the backgrounds. I would not recommend playing it with the sound on, because the sound is probably the biggest sacrifice that was made. But it looks pretty good for a Game Boy Advance fighting game. It looks amazing. And I have spent a lot of time playing this just for fun, just to goof around with it. I actually highly recommend just checking this out if you have ever been into Street Fighter at all and you want a portable experience prior to the Switch that is on Nintendo hardware. That's your best bet. There is no better fighting game on the Game Boy Advance as far as I'm concerned. So next up is Final Fantasy V Advance, which since a white box, so it's kind of hard to see. There they are. There's the cast. I knew they were there all along. So I haven't talked about this on Levels Plus Weekly yet, but the Final Fantasy series and I have a rough relationship. I have a hard time wanting to get into these games. I would say that 1 and 5 are the ones that have actually caught my attention. I've tried playing through 6, and I really like 6 actually. But the issue I had is that I didn't realize that the espers actually had an impact on level growth, and knowing that when I was like past the midway point in the game, that's when I learned it. It's like, oh, I need to redo this. And I was playing the advanced version of that, but I decided that I want to go back to the Super Nintendo one on the Super Nintendo Classic, but I just haven't done it yet, just because the sound's better. And then I've tried 7 twice. I've gotten to the same point. As soon as I get out of Midgar, my interest just goes, because all the mini game stuff that they have in there just really does not work for me. I didn't get into 9. I didn't get into 12. I didn't get into Tactics. I did beat Tactics Advance. That's like the sole Final Fantasy game I've ever beaten. It's Tactics Advance. But I do like 1, and I do like 5. And I like 6. I just need to start it over. I need to try 4 again, because it's been too long since I've tried that. I just have a rough relationship. But I played about an hour of 5 Advance, and I enjoyed it. I actually was like getting into it. I wasn't in the mood to like completely dive in, because I have to play this on my DS here, which is not the world's greatest way to play Game Boy Advance games when you have a broken hinge, as you can kind of see there. That silver point is where the hinge broke. But that's what I've got currently to play Game Boy Advance games. So eventually I will get back into 5 Advance. I'm glad that I have it. I got this at Gamers in Control. It'll be one of the only times I get to say that in this entire video, unfortunately. I've gotten so much stuff from Aaron down there. Last Game Boy Advance game I'm going to cover, because it's the last one I have, is the best Castlevania game. And it's why I'm wearing this shirt, because I love Soma Cruz as a character, and I love this game. This is why I love Castlevania in the first place, to be completely honest with you. I remember getting this when it came out. When was this? 2003? Yeah, 2003. And I remember playing this game on my Game Boy Advance, beating it, starting it again. I do not do that often, but this game is special. It's in my top 11. I want to say it's number 10. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but I think it's number 10 on my list. 10 or 11. And I love the way this game plays. The map is perfect. It looks amazing for a Game Boy Advance game. It does not look as good as Symphony. I mean, in terms of aesthetics, visually and musically, there's no way to top Symphony of the Night when you're a Game Boy Advance game. But in terms of what this does, it's excellent. And honestly, the reason why Aria is higher than Symphony, because Symphony is also in my top 20, is that Aria's map and its gameplay are better. I feel like Symphony had some control missteps, especially when it comes to potion use. Having to equip the potion to use it, I think, is a silly step. This doesn't have that. And I also like the soul system a lot more than the random Castlevania side weapon shenanigans and forced directionals to try to do spells. I think that this just is the better game. Symphony looks better and it sounds better, but this plays better, and that's why. Easily the best Game Boy Advance game. Easily the best Game Boy Advance game that you could get. And it's also on the Wii U Virtual Console, while that's still a thing. So if you don't have a Game Boy Advance or a DS, but you do have a Wii U, you can get it there. So let's talk about the DS. And I showed you briefly my old DS. I'll go ahead and pull it back out again. So I got a blue one back in the day. It's just a regular one. It's on a DSi. Got a lot of playtime out of this, but I don't use it a whole lot anymore because of that hinge. It concerns me, and I tend to only use it for Game Boy Advance games at this point, because the 3DS is able to play DS games. I do have issues though. I'm going to scoot a little bit closer so I'm not as much in the shadows while I'm talking to you, my viewers. I think that Nintendo's generation of the Wii and the DS is their weakest overall out of everything they've done on the video game front outside of the Virtual Boy. And the reason that I believe that is because they got way too much into innovative gimmicks and lost a lot in terms of innovative gameplay and mechanics that didn't rely on said gimmicks. So when I look at my Wii lineup, I have 2 games from Nintendo. I have Sin and Punishment, Star Successor, and I have Kirby's Epic Yarn. And when I look at my DS library, I have Hotel Dusk. And I just have many gripes about the touchscreen not being left-hand friendly, and I'm left-handed. And I have many issues with the Wii motion controls because, again, I think they were not necessarily in tune for a left-handed person, and that they are too imprecise. So when I say that the DS screen is not great for left-handed people, I'm going to show you on my 3DS. It basically is functionally the same. So how this thing is designed is that it's like most people play like this. So like when you're right-handed, you can see most of the screen pretty well. Now the way I hold the DS with my left hand, when I play, my hand's just there. And especially on that smaller DS screen, because like I have a 3DS XL, so the screens are huge in contrast to the DS. I couldn't see to be able to like play like the Zelda games, because you're on the bottom screen directing Link with the touchscreen stylus, and I couldn't see him just by the very nature of my hand being in the way. So I have a lot of issues with touchscreen, and you'll notice that when I cover most of the DS games, there's not many that are touchscreen specific that are actiony. Generally speaking, I am not a fan of touchscreen controls, especially on the DS. One game that I think did it really well is the one Nintendo game I just mentioned, which is Hotel Dusk, Room 215. Love the art direction. Love the visual aesthetic of this game. The Take On Me style of animation in this is gorgeous in motion. I absolutely adore it. It's one of Nintendo's best localized games that they've ever done. It's superbly written, great characters, the soundtrack is phenomenal. They use the DS features cleverly. One of my favorite parts is having to close the DS to accomplish the puzzle. I think that's really cool. Only major issues I have with Hotel Dusk is that the bowling mini game is really loose and having to move around the map with the touchscreen. And that was exasperated a bit because I played it last year on my 3DS. So again, let me just show you some console stuff. So regular DS, 3DS. You can see that there's a size difference. The 3DS is heavier than the DS. And with the DS, I'm not going to actually hold it that way for long, but when you play Hotel Dusk, you play it like this. So it feels like the way that this is designed, like in terms of my hand size, this is perfect. It doesn't really feel like I'm straining anything when I hold it like that. But with 3DS, because it's so much bigger, like I'm already feeling a difference because it just doesn't feel as like it fits in my hand quite as well. That was perhaps my own fault, but I wanted to see the bigger screens. But Hotel Dusk is a top 10, 11, I lost track of which. It's in my top 15, we'll just say that. I still haven't quite memorized where all of the little changes went, but I know the Hotel Dusk was one that did change. But it's a top 15 game for me. I still love it. I'm still disappointed in you, Nintendo. Still disappointed that you did not localize Last Window, even though all you could have done is just grab the PAL localization and make a couple changes to the word usage, and it would have been fine. But no, Can't do that. And now it's expensive to import it. So I'm just cranky. I'm cranky at Nintendo for that period for a lot of reasons. But let's talk about things that are also excellent instead of being cranky at Nintendo, because it's not going to accomplish anything. They're not going to watch this. So, Ghost Trick. Whoa, I'm way close to the camera now. It's like I'm a ghost. It's like I'm playing Ghost Trick. Ghost Trick is probably, in my opinion, the best game Capcom made in the last 11 years. Yeah, I truly believe that. More than any of the Resident Evils, more than Devil May Cry 5, more than any of their fighting games, more than Dragon's Dogma, anything else that you could think of. This is the best game that they've made in the last 11 years. It is beautiful to watch. This is one of the later regular DS games, and the animation quality on this is just beyond anything else on the DS, in my opinion. It is just beautiful to watch in motion, and it's a lot of fun to play too, because they basically turned this into a mystery puzzle game where you're a ghost and you have to manipulate objects to solve the puzzle of that particular piece of the storyline. And it's really, really good. And it's really well thought out, and it's localized really well, and everything about this game just works in its favor. And it's an absolute shame that the only way that this has made any sort of modern concession is on mobile. I mean, at this point, we could probably put this on Switch pretty easily, I would think. We've got Mega Man ZX and ZX Advent on Switch. We could probably figure out some way to use that dual screen setup to allow this to function on there. But yeah, if you want Capcom's best game in the last few years, track down Ghost Trick. And now for my controversial hot take that Apollo Justice Ace Attorney is the best Ace Attorney game. A lot of people don't like this game. I'm not sure why. I think that Apollo is an excellent protag. Trucy is one of my favorite women in games. I like how Phoenix is handled in this game. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't played it, but I think that his role is very interesting, and I think that Clavier is a really good defense attorney that makes a really good counterpoint to like Miles and Francisca and Godot in the earlier games. All the cases are solid. The animation quality is higher than any of the prior games. I think people just weren't ready for a new protagonist. I don't know. If you haven't played Apollo Justice, I would recommend checking this out. It's superb. It's my favorite Ace Attorney game. I don't have the other three anymore because I have them on my Switch. It is rumored, I believe, that this, along with the 3DS Phoenix Wright games, will be compiled together in a second trilogy on the Switch and other systems, and I would really like that. I think that this deserves some more acclaim. Officially on the Square Enix train, we're going to have many games from Square Enix to cover. And most of them are from one franchise, so I'm going to just lump all of those together. But before we do that, there's one game of theirs that is not from that franchise. And it's hard to show it. There we go. Hey, this is a much better take than the last time I tried to get this cover. It's Chrono Trigger, my third favorite game of all time. And this is the way to experience it, in my opinion. This is definitive. It has everything the Super Nintendo game had, plus a better localization. The soundtrack is not horribly compromised. It actually sounds just about as good as it did on the Super Nintendo hardware, in my opinion. It has all the PS1 stuff, so you'll get the anime cutscenes and the extra stuff that came with that. So there's a sound test, you have an ending gallery, New Game Plus is the Super Nintendo one. Plus, there's new content that is pointless and bad. But it's all optional. It's all optional. So I'm glad that Tose, who handled this port, made that all optional. They added some new dungeons. The problem is that with Chrono Trigger, in the main game, if you are trying to backtrack, let's say you wanted to get one of those fancy chests that you can only unlock after a certain key story beat, you can dodge all the enemies for the most part to get back to an area where you've been before. The new dungeons don't do that. They force you to fight battles if you trip their little sensor, and their sensor is like pretty wide. So that's the biggest fault with the new dungeons. The gear you get is great, but it doesn't do anything beyond being like extraordinarily overpowered. There's a monster arena that I never really dabbled with, and then there's one new ending that ties it more into Chrono Cross, I guess. Ultimately, though, all the new content is just there, and it's like if you want to be a perfectionist or a completist or whatever, you can do that, but you don't have to. All you have to do is play the main game. It's there. All the side stuff's marked. If you have any familiarity with the original game, you'll kind of know what to. If you don't want to deal with it, you can just walk away from it. They also added in some dual screen presentations, so there's like a map on the bottom, which is kind of nice, and then you got the main game on the top, and when you press start, like your menus are different, so it uses both screens, so there's more information about what your items are and what your stats are and all that. Just, this is the way to play Chrono Trigger. And I hope that at some point this gets off of just being on Steam and gets out there to more modern stuff, because this is a legendary game. It really is. And it's a tragedy that we can't play it on anything on a modern system except mobile and Steam. And both of those did not start well, so I can't really recommend supporting at least the mobile one. I guess the Steam one, they finally got rid of that pixel filter. But anyway, next up is, this will give away what the marathon's going to be, but this is Dragon Quest Heroes Rocket Slime. So this is a funny story. I should have shared the funny story about Hotel Dusk too, which both of them involve JD. So let me just pull Hotel Dusk back off the shelf for a second, and we'll talk about both of these, because both of these involve JD. So JD hooked me up with a new cart for Hotel Dusk Room 215 because my old one was starting to act strange. With Rocket Slime, I've had this game twice. The first time I bought it complete from Circuit City, which I bought a lot of the DS stuff that's in my collection from there. The Apollo Justice and probably Dragon Quest IV and V. Probably the Castlevania games. Those all probably came from Circuit City. And I bought this. I played through it. I really like this game. It's very charming. It's basically like part of it's Zelda overworld-esque thing with a slingshot mechanic with the stylus, which is one of the games where it works well. And then the other part is a tank battling game where you are inside your tank and having to arm it and heal it and stuff like that. It's really well done. But I sold it because I beat it, and it's like, I felt pretty good. But then it's one of those situations where I sold it and then I felt bad about selling it. So JD just sent me a cart of Rocket Slime for my birthday about a year or two ago. And then my forum friend that I talked about all of the PS2 games last time had the case with the manual. So I asked for that when he was giving out stuff. So I have a complete copy of this again, and that makes me very happy. Alright, so since we were in Dragon Quest, there was many Dragon Quest games on the DS, and I have 4. I have 5. I have 6. And I have 9. And I have played through 4, 5, and 9. So I will just briefly touch on those. I haven't played 6 yet much. So I'm not going to really say anything beyond. I'm glad I have it because it's really expensive to pick up now, apparently. But 4 is a really good game. I really enjoyed playing through 4 and experiencing all of the various stories and then all those characters coming together. I think it's one of the few times the JRPGs really nailed that. Start a character and start a new character from basically scratch, end, and repeat. I typically don't like having to start from the beginning when I play a game. You might have noticed that I complained about that when it came to Days X a little bit, where the DLC kind of strips you from the all of the powers that you have built up. So you are basically back to level 1, and then you can redo them all at the end. I didn't like that. That was one of the worst parts of that game. I just don't like losing stuff that I've already gained. When it comes to like Metroid, when it does at the beginning, I don't mind so much. But when it's like in the middle of the game, when you're deep into it, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm back at where I started, I don't like that. But this is a good example of doing it right. And this is on my top 111. It's a really, really good JRPG. Probably the best way to play it, too. The biggest issue with 4 is that if you played 8, or any of the ones since this one, Dragon Quest localization has gotten really big on dialects and accents as part of a way of showcasing nationalities, and 4 took it too far. Like, it can be difficult to read some of the text in this game, especially if you're tired, because it's so dialecty, which, you know, can be okay, but in this game I think they overdid it. 5 is the best of the old school Dragon Quest before 8 that I have played. I love the family dynamic. I think that having the story begin with father and son, and then that son becomes the main protagonist, and then that son gets married and then has children, that's rad. That's such a cool story concept, and it's beautifully executed in Dragon Quest V. And this was the first time this was localized. So it's currently the only way to play 5 in North America is this version. And it's a shame that it's still kind of locked to the DS because it's such a good game, and I hope that at some point we'll get these on modern consoles. The really cool thing about this as well is that you have a monster wagon. Yeah, this game has monster recruitment in it. So you could supplement your human characters with monsters, and some of those monsters are really, really worth having in your party. If one of your characters goes down, the monster wagon will refill and throw someone else in there. So it's kind of like 11 does this too, that you have like a wagon of characters. So if one person goes out, you can tag in a new character to replace them. Just a cool idea. I really like Dragon Quest V. I haven't played 6, but I have it. I'm glad I have it because, like I said, it's gotten expensive. Generally speaking, I've heard this is the low point of the 3 PS1 ports, which these are basically PS1 ports. And that the original game was also the weakest of 5 and 6. But I haven't really played it, so I can't really talk about it a whole lot. I love 9. 9 is my second favorite Dragon Quest game overall, as of right now. Like I think I mentioned I'm playing 11, although I've taken a little break from it. I need to get back into it. But 9 is an excellent game, but it is horribly compromised now because it was so dependent on features of the DS that are no longer available. So basically this game had dungeons that you could, or like underground lairs or whatever, that basically were Street Pass before Street Pass was a thing on the 3DS. So you could walk around with your DS and it would tag other consoles that were wandering around that had it, and you would pick up new maps. And there were some really, really good ones that you could potentially get. There was also an online shop that changed its stock weekly with rare gear. That's no longer there. If you didn't boot this game up before a certain point, you missed out on all of the Dragon Quest cameo gear, because a bunch of characters from the earlier games show up in the hotel. And there was local multiplayer, which I don't know if that's even a thing you can still do. So while the core game is excellent all by itself, it doesn't need any of those things to still be a superb time. It's sad that a lot of the post-game content, which is the dungeons and those Dragon Quest cameos and all that, are gone. They're just gone. So I hope that at least 9 gets a second chance at life on modern consoles. Next up is Castlevania Portrait of Ruin and Castlevania Order of Ecclesia. Now you'll notice I don't have Dawn of Sorrow, and the main reason I don't have Dawn of Sorrow is that I got really annoyed at it for 2 reasons. One is I really dislike the fact that they tried to go after like a different audience with the character design change. I believe it's Ayumi Kojima, I believe is right. If I'm wrong, I'll put a blurb down at the bottom and I accept my apologies. I love her art style. I think that she was such a great fit for Castlevania, and to go from Aria of Sorrow looking just stunning in terms of its artwork to Dawn of Sorrow's very generic anime designs was a huge step back. Huge step back. And so they kind of ruined a lot of the visual aesthetic for me. The other reason is I hate that it's a DS game, and when I say DS, I mean literally it was designed to emphasize the features of the DS. Everything else that they did in terms of the touchscreen was poorly done, and it really ruins the gameplay experience, because it still plays good, it's still a good map, the sound's fine, it looks great, but they just ruined it with the seals, and they ruined it with the ice blocks. Having to fight a boss, and then all of a sudden you defeat the boss, but there's suddenly a touchscreen implemented thing that pops up, and you have to suddenly stop playing the game. There's no pause really. It's just like the seal pops up, and then it reminds you quickly what it is, but then it goes away, and you have to input that seal. And again, left-handed, just like. If you try to do it with your finger, it might not work because your finger is too big for the seal points. And if you try to pull a stylus out of your DS or off the table, it might go flying off somewhere. I hate that mechanic so much. Like, Dawn of Sorrow is such a good game that one thing really, really broke it for me. And then there's ice blocks that you have to use the touchscreen to break. And I think I touched on this. I hate... One of my other pet peeves when it comes to games is having to redo things I've already done to get back through an area I'm backtracking through. I absolutely detest having to repeat something because I've already gone through it. I feel like I should be done. I don't have to do that again. And some games make that critical mistake, and that's basically what happens with these ice blocks, is that you break them, but if you have to go back to that area, you have to do it again. But you can't do it with an attack, you have to actually use your finger. Bad thinking. So those are my qualms about Dawn of Sorrow. At this point, since I'm wanting to actually have all the games in my favorite franchise, I'll probably reacquire it at some point, but I'm not in a hurry to. So, hot take number 2 in this video. I think Portrait of Ruin is the best overall DS Castlevania game. I think it's also incredibly rushed. But I do think that the 2-character mechanic with Jonathan and Charlotte is really fun. I love playing as Charlotte. I love her magic system. being her main means of attack. I wish she had more stuff to attack with outside of spells, but outside of that, I really enjoyed playing as her. She's a lot of fun. I think that some of the new environments that they did add were really clever and really beautiful to look at. I think that the soundtrack is the second best in the series behind the original game. Adding Yuzo Koshiro to the mix was a great idea, and both Koshiro and Michiru Yamane did a splendid job. Superb soundtrack. The art in the game, as you can tell, it's still anime, but it's a little bit better than Dawn of Sorrow. But there's a lot of 20th anniversary art that they did for this that is infinitely better. And then, of course, when they brought Kojima back to do Harmony of Despair art, she just took those designs and just made them sing. And despite the compromise that is clearly there, like there's stuff that's clearly got dropped out of this game, and it's not as tight as it could be. I just think it's the funnest one to play. So that's my argument. That's nothing against Order of Ecclesia, which I think is also splendid, and I love the new art direction on this that's much closer to Kojima's. I forget the artist's name, I'll plop it here. The thing about Order of Ecclesia is it's really freaking hard in contrast to all the other Metroidvania Castlevanias. If you don't pay attention to the mechanics, then you are going to be having a hard time. And I kind of like that for this game. It works for this game. I think that for Shinoa, it's effective to have like actual element weaknesses make sense with the way that they designed this game. In terms of why I feel that Portrait of Ruin's a little bit better, I feel like this game gets a bit samey in terms of its environments. That seems to be the area that was the biggest compromise. It also has a lot of recycled sprites, which all of the DS games do. But I think Shinoa's a really fun character to control, but there's like her wings are not. It's not a suitable triple jump in my opinion. It's just not as effective as Alucard, Soma, and Jonathan's spin on those. But overall, it's a really, really good game. I'm glad that they made it a little bit kind of throwback to Simon's Quest in some ways. I like the villager aspect. It's just really, really challenging. So if you want a good, difficult Castlevania game, that's one I can recommend. My last DS game is Monster Tale. I remember buying this at Target, and then the next time I was at Target, it was on clearance. I paid full price. But I really like this game, probably more than a lot of other people do. I think that Dream Rift did a really good job with the animation. It's got a good soundtrack. It plays really well. It falls victim to that backtracking problem that I was just complaining about, though. So that's the biggest knock I have on it. I also feel that the pet raising sim part, which was an attempt to really make it stand out from other games of its ilk, was a bit of a distraction sometimes. There's a lot of variance with it, and I feel like they could have probably just simplified it, honestly, instead of having it be like, you gotta do all these different things to make your monster exactly the way you want it. And I just feel like, just let me feed it, and then it gets stronger and levels up that way, and don't give me like 20 different ways of developing my monster. 30 unique forms. I don't need 30. Give me like 5. Dream Rift died, it seems, in the development of the ultimate version of Monster Tale, but Majesco did recently announce that they're porting it to modern consoles. I don't know if they're bringing just regular old Monster Tale, or if they worked out some way to resurrect Monster Tale Ultimate. No idea. It's a shame that Ultimate never came out, because the changes that they had announced sounded really cool, but hopefully the new version will be a better version of this, because I think it's a good game that was hampered by some design decisions that they were clearly wanting to address. They just didn't. All right, 3DS time. So, got Metroid Samus Returns. This is one of the last games I picked up for the 3DS in terms of at the time it came out. I think this is a top 5 Metroid game. I think if I were to rank them, which I don't know if I've actually done an official ranking for Metroid, but it would be Metroid or Super Metroid. It would be Metroid Prime, Metroid Zero Mission, then this, and then I would probably I'd have to decide between Prime 2 Echoes and probably the original, honestly. But this is a really good game. It's a really good update to the Game Boy original. It does lose something. It's not as moody or atmospheric as the Game Boy game, and I think that's one of the strengths the Game Boy game had, was that it was really alien and really made you feel isolated. And this game doesn't quite do that. But it does a lot of things right. I think that some of the new stuff they add, like the free aim's good, the melee counter's good, the new Aeon abilities are good. The biggest problem I have with Samus Returns is the enemy respawn rate is tuned way too high. Like, you could literally walk across a room, realize you forgot something, and turn around and you have to deal with all the enemies you just fought. And the problem with that is that a lot of them require the counter to actually be able to deal with them quickly. So it's a bit of a slog, and it's a different way of my saying, don't make me redo what I just did to backtrack type of argument. But other than that, I really like Samus Returns, and I love the way that Samus's armor looks in that game. I love the big bulky shoulders. So, Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem had quite the resurrection on the 3DS following the failure of Shadow Dragon and the remake that never was localized in New Mystery of the Emblem, which was a much better remake, but we never got it. We got Awakening, and we got Fates, which I will not show you because I don't have it, and Echoes, Shadows of Valentia. And both of these are top tier Fire Emblem games, and both of them are in my top 50. Awakening is just slightly higher, and it's ultimately because this game is very traditional in a lot of ways, but it added a lot to it. I think the addition of the casual mode was a huge factor for why it became so successful overseas as well. The character design is splendid. It's a great story, wonderful voice acting. Lucina is one of my favorite characters. It looks great, other than the lack of feet. A lot of fun. The team-up mechanic is overpowered in this game, but it's still fun to use. This is a great game, and I hope it gets brought to the Switch somehow, as I hope for Echoes. Echoes is actually another remake, but they learned a lot from Shadow Dragon, and this is a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden, which I do have over there, but I don't want to make that awkward pause and suddenly show up with the cart in my hand. But this follows Alm and Celica, who were the original protagonists of Gaiden. And this is a very different Fire Emblem game. You actually can dungeon dive and do like exploration in dungeons, which is unheard of in Fire Emblem. You have two different storylines that you could take part in. So Alm and Celica are on their own missions, and you basically can jump back and forth. The biggest issue I have with Echoes, because ultimately this is a superb game and I love the gameplay of it, and the music, and the graphic design, and the character design. This is a beautiful box art. I love this box art, and Echoes might have the best soundtrack. It's really between this and Three Houses, and there's times where I think that Echoes is better, and there's times I think Three Houses is better. But this is an amazing soundtrack. And the voice acting is also superb in this as well, and it's the first fully voiced Fire Emblem. The biggest issue I have is that there's dud characters on both sides. There's Faye for Alm, who crushes on him so hard that that's basically her character, is that I love Alm. That's it. That's all she has. And then on Celica's side, there's some sexist pig character whose name I forget, but that's basically who he is, that's what he's about, and I benched him immediately and hated when he got put into the story. Because I just like to prefer to not think about those types of characters. But both of these are great, and if you want to know more about why I don't have Fates anymore, check out Levels Plus, the written materials on characters and gameplay that I wrote several years ago, and you'll start to understand why I don't have any fondness for Fates. Alright, next up is Cold Sept Revolt. I don't know when exactly Nintendo reached out to Amaya Soft to basically say, hey, we want to publish Cold Sept. But it happened at some point. I think the DS, there's a DS Cold Sept that wasn't localized. And then they did it again in the 3DS, and that's why there's Cold Sept stuff in Smash, which is just wild to me. But I haven't really played Revolt. I got it on clearance at Best Buy for really cheap. I want to say I paid like $6 for it. NIS America localized it, so I don't know how good the localization is. They can be hit or miss. Hopefully it's not a miss. But it has nice art by Kino Nishimura from Capcom fame, and I just find the concept of Cold Sept interesting. So I showed you the PS2 one I have, so I just figured why not. At that price, it's kind of hard to say no. And then we've got Mega Man Legacy Collection. I don't know if I could recommend the 3DS version being the definitive way to play Legacy Collection. Unless you just really don't have a Switch and the 3DS is your only option and you want to play your Mega Man games portably. There's nothing wrong with this version. All 6 games are here. There's challenge mode. They're emulated extremely well. This basically was the tech that went on to power future Digital Eclipse releases. And the 6 games here are from good to exceptional. I mean, you've got the Titans in Mega Man 2 and 3. I think Mega Man 6 is underrated and is the best of the series later days. Mega Man 1 and 5 are perfectly fine, and 4, even though it's my least favorite, is still okay. I mean, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't look or sound or play as good as the others, but it's still an okay game. So there's no reason, unless you just don't like classic Mega Man, to not own this somewhere, somehow, and currently I feel the 3DS is a good place for me to have those, so. More Dragon Quest, because I am a fan. As I was saying earlier, I don't seem to resonate with Final Fantasy, but I resonate with Dragon Quest, so I am collecting all of those. So I have 7 and 8. I didn't really show 7 very well. I have 7, which I did actually reveal during when I was showing off Dragon Warrior 7, and then I have 8. So I'm not going to talk about 7 because I talked about 7 briefly last time. I haven't played the 3DS version, other than it's amazing that it got localized. It came out like in the first year and a half or so of the 3DS's life, and it came out here like in the last year of the 3DS's life to kind of fill gaps in Nintendo's release catalog, along with 8. 8 is my favorite Dragon Quest of all time. It's one of the greatest JRPGs ever made. And the 3DS version is the best way to play it. The visuals are compromised, of course, because you can't go from the PS2 to the 3DS without some visual downgrade. The soundtrack is also a downgrade, which is unfortunate. My understanding is that the 3DS Japanese version did have the original or the symphonic soundtrack, but because this one, the localization, added a lot of voice acting in that I don't think that the Japanese one had, they had to go to the PS2 Japanese original soundtrack instead, which just doesn't sound as good as the PS2 version, but it's either that or a licensing thing with Sugiyama, the jerk. So the reason why this is definitive, despite the visual and the audio downgrades, is that everywhere else this is a better game, except maybe the menus. You get full voice acting on like every cutscene, and much more dialogue that's spoken, and than in the PS2 game. You get new characters. Red and Mori are fully playable. You just have to unlock them. And they add a lot of new strategies to the game, which is awesome. There's new equipment. There's a camera mode, and now there's Street Pass. But the big thing, the big change that I think makes this definitive is the fact that they removed random encounters and put all of the monsters on the field, a la Dragon Quest IX. And basically set the stage for 11 to do the same thing. And this is the way to play this game because of all of those things. I also believe that there's some more post-game content in here that was not available in the PS2 version of the game. That is one I would not have a problem seeing ported up to the Switch at some point. Because as we've learned, porting up 3DS games is not impossible because it happened with the Alliance Alive. But I don't see, other than a visual upgrade, any reason to get Alliance Alive on the Switch beyond prettier visuals, because they didn't really add anything. And I really like it on the 3DS. I think it's a really good fit, and that double screen is probably really helpful. So this is like, it's got people who worked on Saga, people who worked on Suikoden, coming together, and they made a game that uses elements of both of those games plus a lot of original stuff, and it's just one of the best JRPGs I've played that came out in the 2010s. Like, it really surprised me how much I got into this game. It's just superb. Gameplay-wise, lots of fun. The combat's great. The base mechanics are great. Adds something interesting to it. You could kind of see the Suikoden influence in those. Just wandering about is fun. The soundtrack is spectacular. The environment art is great. I'm not the hugest fan of the chibi art style, and that's basically my biggest argument about the HD version on the Switch, is that I don't care for the character designs to be in a higher def, and I think that is actually a bit of a detriment, because there's two characters that are in this game that are sexualized to some extent. One is constantly upskirted in battle scenes, and another is basically wearing battle bikini armor, and they're chibi characters. I mean, see, they're adorable. I don't need to be a part of that in higher definition. So that was basically my biggest argument against upgrading to the Switch version. But outside of that one nitpick of mine about the two of the women in this game, this is a wonderful game. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't played it. Last but not least is Sega 3D Classics Collection. This has 9 games on it, 7 of which were released through the eShop on the 3DS, which was Power Drift, Puyo Puyo 2 Sue, I want to say, Sonic the Hedgehog, Fantasy Zone 2 W, Altered Beast, Galaxy Force 2, and Thunderblade. And now, I don't use the 3DS slider for a lot of games. It hurts my eyes, and to be honest, this also hurts my eyes. But in terms of execution, this is amazing. M2 are gods when it comes to this stuff. And the 3D effect that they were able to pull off with these games is a technological feat that I really admire, even if I can't look at it for very long. This is probably not the world's most desired collection, because in Japan they released 3 of these, but they only released the middle one here. And you get 2 bonus games, which is the original Fantasy Zone 2 and Maze Walker. But when you think about the other collections, you got like Gunstar Heroes and Streets of Rage 2 and Shinobi 3. I want to say there was a Phantasy Star or 2 that was on there. It's like just stuff that I think might have been a little bit more appealing to the North American audience. Because in terms of this, it's like you have Sonic the Hedgehog and like Altered Beast, and I think that's what people will know, unfortunately. And maybe Fantasy Zone. But this is like an obscure Fantasy Zone. That's not to say that any of the games on here are bad. In fact, I think I dabble with all of them briefly, and they're all good. I mean, the only one I don't like is Altered Beast, but I mean, this is probably the best way to play it. At least you'll be visually impressed by it. But yeah, that is the last 3DS game, and before we wrap up this recording, I would show off the actual 3DS a little bit more closely. So I have the Link Between Worlds 3DS, which I got at Gamers in Control. I really like this 3DS a lot. The inside isn't too fancy, but it's just gold. But it came with Link Between Worlds on the system, and currently I have an Alliance Alive background on it. I've gotten a lot out of that 3DS. I feel like the 3DS remedied a lot of the issues I had with the DS in terms of touchscreen utilization and just more focusing on making games fun versus making them innovative. It's unfortunate we didn't see as much of certain franchises. Like, we only got one Castlevania game, and it was a Lords of Shadow game. So, but we did get at least a proper Metroid on it. So, and we got a good Legend of Zelda game on it that doesn't require the touchscreen to play it. So, overall, I'm happy with the 3DS. I used to have a lot more for it, but I've been kind of whittling it down. And I have a fair amount of stuff actually from the eShop on the 3DS as well. I've got like 7th Dragon, 3rd, or whatever they called it here. A bunch of Game Boy and NES games. I don't remember what else. This is just a regular 3DS XL. It's not the fancy one, not the new 3DS. So I don't have any Super Nintendo games on it. But I love all of those systems, and like I look at this and it's like, oh, Castlevania, Bionic Commando, Fire Emblem, Zero Mission, Portrait of Ruin, Dragon Quest IX, 5, 4, Chrono Trigger, Ace Attorney, Ghost Trick, Hotel Dusk, Alliance Alive, Dragon Quest VIII, Mega Man 3, Fire Emblem Echoes and Awakening, and Samus Returns. All of those are on my top 111. So there's a lot of quality on the Nintendo handhelds that I really do enjoy. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me talk about my book and my games. Next week, I'm going to have more stuff related to my Famicom Power project, which I did touch on earlier. Very excited to share those. So we'll have some pickups. Might have more too. We'll have to see. We'll have to see on that. And then I'll talk about something, because that's how I roll on Levels Plus Weekly. I tend to not, unless I get a really good topic and I just want to talk about it instantly, I usually just kind of wait and see what I feel like doing. So I feel it works for this format. I just like talking about games, and it's fun, and I hope that you enjoy listening to me talk about this stuff. So thanks again. Have a wonderful day, wonderful week, and we'll see you soon. Take care.